This episode is brought to you by one of my absolute favorite things, which is Audible. My library collection has informed my life, my decisions, my entertainment as well. It is one of my cherished collections, is my Audible collection. I am somebody who is usually doing something with my hands, and as much as I love to read physical books, I definitely put it off too much, and in lieu of that, I will listen to audiobooks so that I still make sure I have time to learn new things and hear stories that inspire and entertain and inform. And the one book that I couldn't more highly recommend is The Gift of Fear for any woman in your life, your sister, your daughter, your mother, your best friends. Also, great book just for everybody to read. But Gavin DeBecker, the author, definitely wrote it for the woman's perspective in many ways. It is one of maybe the top book that I would recommend for anyone who is interested in just starting to cultivate their self-protection and self-defense practices, cultivating your intuition, and really starting with the things that aren't something that you have to physically train, but just paying attention to your surroundings and people's language. And it not only comes into play when it comes to staying safe from somebody who might want to do physical harm, but it's a really good way of just listening and understanding people and getting some insight into their intentions and developing your intuition so that you can really trust what is coming from within you in any given situation. I think it is such an important book. And again, I couldn't more highly recommend it. So there's a 30-day trial link in my description for this podcast. And I so extremely invite you to take me up on that if you haven't already. Watch how your life changes when you start really cultivating what you're listening to and what you're learning and the things that you're bringing into your life that are not just being thrown at you without you making a conscious choice about it. It's really pretty magical when we make those decisions. Enjoy the episode. Hi friends, my name's Greta Hotmer, and this is my podcast, Thought Experiment Called Life. I made this podcast for multi-passionate, creative people who are just interested in everything. I am one of those people. I almost didn't start this podcast because it doesn't really neatly fit into any niche. I talk about a bunch of different topics, but they're areas that I have some sort of knowledge in or some level of expertise and things that I care about deeply. The topic today that I will be talking about is in the realm of self-defense and martial arts. I have trained for a long time. Started training when I was 15. I'm 42 now. I did take about 10 years off from just dealing with Lyme disease and was in my beginning of my music career, which is what I do full time now. So there was some overlap in there, but pretty much have dedicated a very large portion of my life to martial arts in some degree and self-defense in particular. I came out of the womb, I don't really know why, wanting to know how to fight, how to, take care of myself. And I'm assuming it's because I'm just very tiny. And my dad was a really big influence on me. And just we were my sister and I were the sons he never had. So he would always encourage, just the athletic side of things in particular. I mean, my nickname was Shrimp in elementary school, when I was very little, and I'm only 5 feet tall. And things that I'll be talking about today are things that I know I have experienced from a very young age. And I can say most women, if not all women, have also experienced these things. And, this is an issue that, like I said, is very near and dear to my heart. I spent a good portion of years. My first real job was teaching krav maga. And I taught in South Philly primarily. So I was 19 and teaching, and friends what are you going to teach me? You're just this little thing. But we had students that, actually did have to use it. So I really got to see it put into practice, which really made it very real for me. And so thankful to my old instructor, Ernie, and his old team, and my friends from Krav Maga Worldwide, Krav Maga Alliance, and Ernie's organization, Krav Maga Universal. They were the people who taught me everything that I know, and we got to work with the law enforcement officers, helped with their training, helped with, all different types of self-defense for military, for law enforcement, for women just on their own as well. And it's something that I have a lot of thoughts about, a lot of feelings about. But specifically today, I wanted to talk about something called pre-incident indicators. And it's literally the pre-incident of any kind of actual violent action. That's really the time where we have so much power and agency and ability to hopefully navigate away from any situation where we actually need to use physical violence at all, because that's not the goal, right? Like, to train self-defense, I'm most happy with my self-defense training knowing that I don't have to use it because I pay attention a lot. I'm very hypervigilant for sure. Maybe some people think too hypervigilant, but it keeps me feeling safe and cozy in the world when I just pay attention to who's around me, what's around me, why they're around me, and those kinds of things. So I'm going to deep dive into that today. The pre-incident indicators really come from Gavin DeBecker, who I love his work. The book, The Gift of Fear. You can read it, you can have it on Audible, maybe have both. I would give it to every woman that you know. For sure, this applies to anybody who feels at a disadvantage, who feels like they need to protect themselves. But I can speak to the woman's point of view in that this is a very universal female experience. And the reason that I talk about it a lot. So even when I'm teaching jiu-jitsu right now, which is not a complete self-defense system for women, in my opinion, it's a beautiful part of it. Absolutely should be part of it, but you need to have some striking in there as well. And even if you have the striking and you don't have this part, the pre-incident indicator part, it's still not a complete system, in my humble opinion. I'm sure that there could be arguments made against it, I guess, but I think that the book, The Gift of Fear, so incredibly goes through so many things that we as women experience and ways to look at things to keep ourselves safe. I will say the first chapter goes through an actual attack, and then after that, it's the woman talking to Gavin DeBecker about the attack and getting some understanding about the indications that were happening, the red flags that were happening, so she doesn't go through that again. Obviously not victim blaming at all. Again, Gavin DeBecker, I think his work is like top tier for this. But, the thing that I really love so much is he talks so much about intuition and gut feelings, right? And really hammering home the importance of paying attention to those things, which we'll get into at some point. So they're doing work outside, so I don't know when they're going to start again. I think they're taking a break. I'm going to try to get through this somewhat speedily. So there are verbal and non-verbal pre-incident indicators. And again, it's like paying attention to the way that somebody is saying something and the way that they are moving, where they are, those kinds of things. If you find yourself asking, why is that person there? That is you right there. That's your intuition telling you something, or like, that seems odd. And it's not, these shouldn't only be like that if somebody's doing this, they're going to do something violent or terrible, right? I shared a video the other day saying that I was going to talk about this, and a man came up to me in the grocery store and did one of these pre-incident indicators, but it wasn't that I felt that he was going to attack me. It's just that this is something that happens a lot, and it's a form of manipulation where a person who might attack me might be doing those things, right? So like it's just a flag to me to just create some distance. My kind of general philosophy is when I can create distance, I will. And that's just kind of how I roll. It has served me well. We all have to figure out what works best for us, of course, though. So I'm going to talk about intuition first real quick, just as an exercise. Oh, I hope they're not starting outside again. I hear machines. I apologize. This might be a little bit of an odd podcast today, but this is the day that I have to record, so we're going to make it work. When it comes to our intuition or your gut feeling, literally, right? Like that's, where we tend to feel these things. There's a practice that I've definitely done in the more like woo side of my life, of just like feeling a yes and a no in my body that I think that is helpful when putting this together with the self-defense aspect, self-protection, right? So if you think of a statement like I love my children, or I love my cats, or I love whatever, something that's very true, and you feel that in your body, and you can like just get real still and see where you feel that in your body. And then say the opposite, or something that's like totally outrageously false, like I hate my cats or whatever. I hate even saying that. And then you'll feel it somewhere else. And you can practice this too with just things that, like your decisions that you're making in the day, and you want to start small, like, should I go here first or should I go there first, kind of. Should I say yes to this thing or no to this thing? Feel where you feel it in your body. For me, I typically feel good, and I feel the yes feeling right around my solar plexus, and I tend to feel the no, like, no, that's not a good feeling, like lower in my like sacral area. So that's just for me. Everybody kind of has different feelings with that, but that's pretty general. That's like one way that you can start to play with that and see where you're feeling things in your body. And as an aside, if you've been through some shit and your nervous system is a little haywire and you're working on that, really, really practice this with some gentleness and patience as you're like, I know I've been through things where I think that my nervous system, my gut is saying yes based off of traumatic coloring, right? Like based off of old information in that sense. So it's taken me a bit to rewire that so that I can trust that feeling better. So we ultimately should be able to trust that feeling. And sometimes there are complications that are in there that kind of color the situation a little bit differently. So this is why it's really important, especially if you've been through something traumatic, to, whether it's a big T or a little t, to work with a therapist, practitioner, somebody who can help you process that information and be able to get back in touch with your body in that sense. So I want to mention that because that should be something, that's just something I suggest working on and implementing in your life in general, and in particular when it comes to this. I know for me, in my like former years, just didn't have the self-worth and knowledge to understand when somebody's red flag behavior was truly a red flag. I know I'm not alone in this. I talk about this because I know I'm not alone in this, and I hope that it reaches somebody who might be in a similar position that I was in, where it's so funny now that I've done all this work, I can immediately, like, I just know the red flag. The red flag I used to be like, oh, that's fine. It's so much easier to just be like, oh, that's a red flag. And there's like not really an emotional attachment to that anymore. I just kind of go like, oh yeah, younger me would have not identified that and would have maybe fallen into that trap. But like me now, I'm like, good try. All that to say, like, a lot of these things, a lot of these pre-incident indicators were a big reason of what helped me be able to identify those things, being able to identify red flags and then be able to draw those boundaries. So the red flags that, the pre-incident indicators, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, they are helping you show people who are having issues being able to respect boundaries, and to what extent was not necessarily known. And like for me, if I see somebody has an issue with boundaries at this point in my life, that's just like, I keep them at a distance. In particular, if I'm out in public. But when it comes to women and attacks, like these are a little bit older statistics, but they're still relevant. I think this is still exactly the same. 1 in 3 women experience some kind of physical violence from an intimate partner, which is just crazy. So for women, it's usually somebody that we know, somebody that we care about, or know a little bit and feel like don't know how to set that boundary, because we're taught, for the most part, and being general in a lot of ways, I'm sure there's some things people are going to be like, that's not true for X, Y, and Z, and that's fair. But in a general sense, right, let's try to make the blanket big so that we can try to help as many people for the general sense of it, and then we can get into the weeds from there. You can talk to pretty much any woman, and we've been through something like this, whether it was physical, whether it was emotional. It's kind of just something that we deal with all the time, and which is why I'm so passionate about it, because if I can do anything, I would love for any woman who I come into contact with, who crosses my path, whether I train with you or I'm one of your teachers or you're my friend or I meet you here, I hope that I can pass along a little bit of this so that you can also pass it along in turn, so you can have a better understanding of your boundaries, where your boundaries are, where everyone else's boundaries are, and so you can stay safe and be treated with the love and respect that you deserve. So that's like one of my major life missions. And again, for the thing with women, and I feel like I'm a little popping all over the place here, but hopefully I'm congealing somehow. Again, when it comes to self-defense, with women, we can train all the violent things. We can train all of the physical actions, and God forbid you were to be attacked, fight, right? Like that's, and of course I have opinions about what are good tactics, right? But ultimately it's fight. Ultimately it's fight for your life. Create as much damage as you can and get away. So like that is ultimately it. However, for women, it's typically somebody that we know, like I was saying, and that becomes a lot more complicated to fight somebody that you know and love and that you are in a complicated relationship with. One of the books that I could not more highly recommend, whether you are in transition of relationship, have been single for a while, or in a relationship, is called Attached. My future hubby, I probably would have screwed that relationship up had I not read that, because I continually found myself in relationships where the dynamic was off. Let's just put it that way. So I am fortunate that. I'm sorry, that's my old kitty. Frank, you all right? Hi. Hey, bud. It's okay, baby. Fortunately, I did not come across individuals who were physically abusive, but there was very many emotional contexts, and I for sure was not perfect at all, right? So like I'm not trying to put that blame there. It's just to say that when I read the book Attached, I understood my attachment style. So like I knew how to show up better and not accept or seek a certain kind of behavior from anybody else. And then I also recognized there are people who are securely attached, and thankfully I've met one of them, and I didn't have my own attachment things get in there and mess that up. So I think that it's really important to understand the attachment styles, because I've seen, again, in my own life and in my friends' lives and all of that. And I'm not, a therapist for these things. There are plenty of people who have the credentials to back all of this up. But I do really, really highly recommend that if you read that book and get a better idea of the attachment styles, it will help you understand like what's not really jiving with you in that sense, and help you avoid some toxic behavior for you, for them, whatever, moving forward. I feel like if people understand those and like love languages, it can really help you understand what's healthy, what's not, what's normal, what's not. If you've had only really unhealthy relationships modeled for you, it's a good idea, because I just know how impactful it's been in my life and a lot of other people's lives just to have that information. And that sometimes can just be the first step of avoiding, getting into a relationship where you have any physical violence, is just being able to identify, again, the things before you get there, and having enough self-worth, self-love. And those things are, those words are very, very used, just kind of often all the time. But again, working with therapists and practitioners and reading and cultivating those things within yourself, so that something, just because it feels familiar, it doesn't mean that it's love. It doesn't mean that it's kind. It just might be what you've been used to. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch with that little bit right there, but I do think it is really important to mention those things as we go into the pre-incident indicators. And I have them written down here. When I got my black belt in krav, my instructor asked us to write papers, which I love because he was an English teacher before he was doing the specific martial arts alone. And I love that he would always have us read and write papers to back up our training. And I wrote a paper called What a Bitch. And I might put it out to some extent. It's got all of the information here that I'm talking about right now, just in case you want to read it. So it's, women in general are, and again, I'm being very general, but we're taught to be nice. We're taught to not hurt people's feelings. We're taught that if we do, have the same kind of bluntness and forthrightness as many men do, confidence, that it's too much. You're a bitch. You're offending people, blah, 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 all of those things. And I still, as much training as I've done, I still struggle with this. I mean, I had somebody accurately call me out in college. It was very annoying to me, but basically telling me that you train because you don't know how to stand up for yourself otherwise. And I was like, he was not. He was a red flag. And that was technically him engaging me to try to get me to engage back, but he wasn't wrong. And I didn't, and it's still very, it's still something I have to work on. I mean, even just getting mean comments on this podcast and things that I'm sharing and people misunderstanding things, I still have a hard time with. And also I really embrace just not engaging with those things, because that's kind of been, for me, that gray rock not engaging has been the most powerful, because otherwise most of what I'm talking about with this is to draw people in to engage, to further go down this path of whatever path it might be, whether it's a violent path or just an annoying path. People will engage like that. So, all right, enough talk about that. You guys, I think, understand where I'm going with this. The example that I gave the other day, and this is one that I feel like you're going to be like, oh, I totally know this. So verbal pre-incident indicators. I'm just going to kind of list through things is forced teaming. So when people say things like, I was at the grocery store, I was looking for donuts for my man. He wanted donuts. And I was like, I'll go get him one. And I'm standing there looking, and a man comes up to me and he's like, oh, we're having donuts today. And I had seen him already circling. And I was in I posted a video of it recently, but I was, I just come from open mat. I'm sweaty, I'm smelly, I have a lot of things that are just don't talk to me. And so somebody who disregards those things and comes over specifically to be to come and talk to me is a red flag. So I just walked away and didn't give any energy to it. And, this has happened all of my life pretty much. And I was saying, I'm pretty sure that most women, and I'm sure a lot of people understand this, and it can be harmless. It can be totally harmless. Maybe he just wanted to talk to somebody, he's lonely, but I don't engage with people like that, because to me, when I was younger, it just pretty much always turned into an uncomfortable situation. And there's really no reason for us to be talking, I don't know, what do you want? And I don't mean to be so what do you want? Because I really generally, I love most people that I meet. I'm very happy about being in this community and all of that. And at a base level, as a woman, I don't trust men for the most part. You have to really earn that. And the ones that have, I love them so much and they're wonderful. But if you're just some random person coming up to me, and this could be for women as well, if a woman did this too, I probably still would be like, that was weird. What do you want? But I'm not going to ask you. I'm just going to walk away. So things like forced teaming, using we or us, what kind of coffee are we having? Sorry, Frank. A very vocal kitty active action today. Things like, the gas station, what kind of coffee are we getting? Or, doing those kinds of things. It is inauthentic. It's trying to pair you guys together. It's trying to create, most of these things are trying to elicit a response from you so the conversation continues. I had a friend who had a healing center, and she had a male healer over to look at the space. And she was telling about him. I knew who she was talking about, and I didn't get good vibes. And she was saying that he was walking around, and I could tell she was uncomfortable when she was telling me about this person and maybe having him be a renter at her studio. And they're walking around, and she's going, showing the space, and he keeps saying things like, oh, we're going to make this great, and we're going to do da-da-da. And this is her healing studio. And he's coming in as just somebody who might rent some space, saying, we're going to do these things together. And when I sent her all the pre-incident indicators, and I was like, just take a look at this, she was like, he did almost every single one, and I don't think that he, again, meant anything violent by any means, but she did tell him no. And I think that she avoided a lot of drama, heartache. I don't know. She avoided some things that were worth avoiding by not having him there, because I could tell she was already uncomfortable. And I listened, and then I validated her feelings so that she felt better about saying no. And it's really important to do that for our friends too. And you don't have to push it. You can just kind of help them see and then you felt uncomfortable, and then that was weird, and then let's not proceed any further with that person, right? I'm yeah, it can be really helpful to just kind of be that sounding board for your friends like that. So that's forced teaming. I feel like forced teaming is something that happens all the time. When I posted the video, the amount of responses were that happens to me all the time. I was like, I believe it. I totally believe it, because it's a very common tactic. Charm and niceness. This was really interesting to me because, people will be like, they're charming. This guy's so charming or whatever. And, when I read this book, he was saying it's not like they are charming, they're acting charming. They are being charming. They are charming as a verb, you. So they're doing things that are to distract you from maybe who they are actually and what their intentions are. And again, these are things that stick out to me pretty quickly anymore. If somebody comes in a little too hot into a room, I don't know them, and they're just like, and trying to be like, gaining the attention in a way, but also deflecting the attention in a way, that's definitely something to pay attention to. So if somebody feels like they're putting one on for you, they may just be very insecure and not want to have anybody really look into them, or it may be something more where they're just trying to like have you look over here while they do this over here. So something to think about. And they're mowing the lawn, but they're not drilling. So I think that's acceptable. I hope that's okay level of sound for everybody. Something that I really like that Gavin DeBecker says is that niceness does not equal goodness. Niceness is a decision and it's a strategy of social interaction. So figuring out if somebody is being nice because they are trying to get something or they're genuinely being nice. Of course, some people are just genuinely nice, but paying attention to those things. Again, this is just, if you have that signal come up in your body, then pay attention to these things, right? But these are definitely, again, the verbal kind of strategies that will happen when people are trying to like pull one over on you or like draw you in. So too many details is another one. Generally, if people are telling the truth, they're not going to give you too many details. I say generally. I actually sometimes struggle with this one because as you might guess from listening to me talk, I feel like I give too many details sometimes. I feel like that's like an ADD thing as well. But this is more like somebody's telling you a story and they need something from you and they are giving you like a whole big story and you're like, okay, what is happening? So it's just, this is like in that sense where you're going, why are you telling me all this? Like, what is the point of giving me this like big long spiel? Is that true? So, okay, I am battling sounds outside today. I apologize. I have to keep stopping. Hopefully this isn't too disjointed. Hopefully I remember where I am in between these pauses. So I ended with too many details, I believe. Think of a time where you knew somebody was just totally full of shit and they were just like going on and giving you as many details as possible. That's a good example. Typecasting, this is another one called typecasting. So somebody being like, you're probably too this, or you probably don't care about that, but da-da-da-da-da. Or like, you're too pretty to care about the whatever, or you're too whatever. You're probably not like smart enough to, usually it's like an underhanded compliment or an underhanded compliment, right? Something that makes you want to be like, no, that's not true. Like I study things, I do stuff, I'm this, I'm that, and you want to feel like you want to respond. I know I feel like that with YouTube comments a lot. People are like, you don't even know about it. I'm like, yes, I do, I know. But I don't respond typically because I don't think it's productive for the most part. And likewise, in person, if somebody is trying to rope you in with some kind of conversation, saying that you're to this or you're to that or blah, 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 that's generally a way just to get you to respond. And now you're engaged in talking to this person. There's something called gray rocking. I don't remember the exact definition, but basically it's a form of ignoring in a way that can sometimes backfire. But for the most part, like with narcissists, there's plenty of experience there where you get, whether it's texts or inflammatory things being said so that you say something back and you just continue. There's no real point except just to continue the argument and continue in that way. And you'll see that kind of behavior in varying levels of just from nonviolent to extremely violent kinds of people. But gray rocking, look up the actual definition. Essentially, you just become as uninterested and unengaged as possible. Is another way of saying ignoring, but you're just sort of like, just gray, just a totally boring gray rock. Be as boring as possible in that moment. Definitely look it up if you have people in your life who you're like, oh my God, they are totally on that narcissist, even covert, nice narcissist and all of those things. It works very well. It is challenging if you are somebody who is a former people pleaser who sometimes falls back into her old ways. It's very helpful to keep that kind of energy out of your life and welcome in the good vibes, the good energy, the good people who have securely attached ways of being and who are respectful and treat you wonderfully. They exist. So loan sharking is another one. And that would be like somebody offering to hold the door for you. Like, oh, let me hold the door. Let me help you with your groceries. Unsolicited help in general. I will carry all the bags. I will carry all the bags before I'm accepting somebody to help me. And that actually is the story that is in the beginning of The Gift of Fear is somebody offering to help with groceries that are like falling all over the place in a stairwell coming up to this girl's apartment. So there's more to it than that, than how like he got there and everything. But yeah, if you didn't ask for the help, and in general, if you need to ask for help, especially for women, look for another woman to ask for help. So a lot of times when people offer help like that, we don't want to feel rude, speaking generally, but in this context, typically it's like, I don't want to refuse the help because then I feel rude. But be rude when you feel like you need to draw that boundary and something feels off to you. Be a bitch, be rude. I'm not saying overtly, say like, go fuck yourself, but just have enough to be like, no thanks, and be as gray rock as possible, no thanks, and just carry along. Like, don't give any energy to things in that sense when you can. It can be very helpful in that sense. Letting somebody know that you are not the one. Unsolicited promises. So an unsolicited promise, like, I promise I'll leave once you do this thing. I won't hurt you. Like, those kinds of things are absolutely, and that to me is like, we're farther down the line. If somebody's saying like, oh, I won't hurt you, that's like, we're much farther down the line. But just like, just this one thing and then I promise I'll leave. Why are you promising me? I didn't ask. Again, if you notice a lot of the things that I'm saying, like, why are you X, Y, and Z here wanting this, talking to me? I didn't ask for any of these things. If you find yourself coming back to those questions a lot, then that is a red flag. That should be something you should pay attention to. Why do I keep seeing you every time I turn a corner? Why are you asking me this? Why are you interacting with me? What is your motivation? And I think sometimes when I say these things out loud, I feel so rude, being like, oh, why are you talking to me? I'm like, I love kindness and everybody being cool to each other. But there are so many people, unfortunately, that we need to ask these questions about. Not everyone's gotten the memo about being cool yet. So you've got to use your discretion as you go through this. But for sure, this is why these things are important. So just pay attention to it. Pay attention to your own self-defense system in there, your own internal system telling you, like, asking, like, why? Again, if you feel that, like, why? Then just create distance when you can. If somebody discounts the word no right there, that's a deal breaker. They're already showing you that they are going to not be a good person to be around. You're already like in an interaction with them. So if, for instance, you've started a negotiation and you're losing that negotiation and they know that. If they're like, let me help you with your bags, and you're like, no, and then they persist and you're like, no, okay, and then they're helping you with your bags, and then now the power dynamic is off in that scenario. And if they do have not good intentions, like, that's not a good path. No thanks, and just move it along. No thanks, and look at them like, no. You have to get firm with people at times. The thing I really, with all of this that I really advocate for training is being able to turn on the vibe that you are comfortable with your body and deploying it as necessary. That translates. That's something I have, knock on wood, the number of situations that I've been in where I was pretty positive something bad was going to happen. There have been a couple, and I had to basically handle it with my posture, my facial expression, and my energy coming out, being like, do not fuck with me. And I didn't really have to like say anything necessarily. It was just like a shift in my like posture. And I only can do that because I've trained a bunch, because I've thought about these things a lot and talked about these things a lot, but they were not cool situations. And there have been like 4 at least that I can think of that, could have really not gone well. The word no, your vibe, no. Those are things. And I am definitely a people-pleasing kind of, like, I don't like making people upset. I don't like when they're mad at me. When, again, going back to that guy in college who was like, you do this because you can't stand up for yourself. Very true. But I'm learning how to stand up for myself in all other ways. But being able to, like, if you have a hard time with that, if you are a people-pleaser kind of person, like I am, I know, training really does help you be able to carry your posture when maybe you're having a hard time feeling rude or whatever, but you're able to, like, your body will stand in for you to know that somebody does not have good intentions or might not have good intentions, or you're feeling uneasy about a situation or somebody's vibe. It's one of my favorite reasons to train. So then, we look at nonverbal pre-incident indicators that, again, these are all like examples of things. They're not all totally inclusive. And again, of course, it doesn't mean that anybody who's doing this is definitely violent. I definitely want to drive that home. It just means that these are the kinds of things that are red flags, whether they're a red flag in the kind of person you want to have a relationship with, whether it's a friend or a coworker or a romantic relationship, just paying attention to how do you feel when you hear them saying stuff like this? Is it setting off your spidey sense? Like, that didn't feel right. Pay attention to that, validate that, do not discount that. That is your truth. Other things, I've sort of been talking about this as I've been going through, but like inexplicable presence. So this person just showed up here, why and how? Why are they here? What are they doing? Again, the questions. Why are you here? What are you doing? What do you want? That already I'm like creating distance there. People looking at like cameras and target glancing. I mean, you definitely have to like be pretty aware and scanning the room to catch that a lot. But you can tell, you can sometimes tell if somebody's just like shifty looking around at things. You're like, what are you doing? That should be a big red flag. You should probably leave that environment if you see somebody doing something like that. I'm looking around. If somebody is, again, the proximity to you, I'm very, just in life, like if somebody's flanking me to my side in general, this comes a lot from just the training that we did all the time, but I'm very like, I turn to face whoever it is immediately as a practice, whether you're my friend or not. I just need to know, like, what are you doing? Why are you behind me like that? And to my side, I don't like it. I can't see you. So, seeing if somebody is far away and then now they're closer to you, why? Again, why? If their hands are hidden, if there's weird movement, if they look like they have something in their clothes like a weapon, right? These are much bigger red flags. But just paying attention to these things. One thing that I know we used to do a lot was just try to see if somebody was carrying, see if they have a concealed carry and just start to identify those things. It just helps you train your eye. I don't mean to say any of these things so that people walk around being like, oh my God, that guy has this and this person said that and I'm terrified. It's not to do that. It's to really help you just be able to tune and get some reps in of being able to identify, let's say if somebody has a gun, like talked like concealed carry, or just like, is somebody oddly dressed for this occasion? Is it summer and somebody has like a lot of clothes on in a way that they can have something else underneath? Like those kinds of things. I think for me, the biggies really are the proximity thing, just kind of checking where everyone is. When you walk to your car from the parking lot, like having your head up and looking around, like I am looking at everything that's happening there. My biggest, I feel like I want to have just an episode just on, please do me this favor. Everyone's wearing headphones and walking around, whether they're like the in-ear kind or the over-the-ear kind, and it is making me crazy, okay? It's making me crazy. You are cutting off your senses. Somebody can just, the like, if I had like a prank show, it would be to like, I don't know, send somebody able to like grab that person, be like, I got you, not to hurt them, but just to scare them and be like, you did not know because you got headphones on. You have headphones on and you're walking down the street. You have headphones on and you're walking through the grocery store. You have headphones on and you're just doing your thing as if there aren't people around you who see you and you have no sense of hearing them. Please don't do it. I know it's cute. It's so cute. It's so cute. I wish that I could do it. Can't do it. Please, if you must have some kind of sound with you while you're walking, like either playing your phone out of your pocket at a reasonable volume so it's not rude to everyone else, that would be it. But even then, you're still blurring the sound. So like at a low enough volume where you can hear what's going around you, please, like just full stop. That's just something that should not, as women, as girls, your headphone, like at the gym, okay, you're at least in a room where there's cameras and there's people around and all of that. But like walking around everywhere, it is a terrible idea. And please just trust me on this. Like, yeah, I don't know how. I'm like, please. I don't know what else to say. So some of that is just like the lowest hanging fruit of just keeping yourself safe. Like definitely not obstructing one of your senses when you're out. I care so much about self-defense and self-protection. Self-care, to me, it is very much self-care. It took a long time for me to kind of put these two things together because I'm in the realm of like, your vibe and good vibes and whatever, like putting out what you want to put out in the world and your intention. And also there are people who hurt people. It's just a truth. And I don't want you guys to be one of them if you can help it. And of course, in the conversation I had with Aaron, if you go back a couple episodes, it's not your fault if something happens. It's just that like these are things that we can do to help make it less likely. Right? So God forbid something has happened to you. That is not your fault. That is the person who decided to do that's fault. That is what they have decided to do. These are measures that we can take that I really feel are loving to ourselves and really is the ultimate self-care. I think that to be in a space, especially as a woman, to have that warrior spirit married with your beautiful, creative, loving presence that you put into the world of, I'm here to have my energy contribute to society in a positive way and also don't fuck with me. All right, like those two things can happen together. And I think that it's really healthy when we have more women who are in that space. And yes, some men will be like, oh my God, that's like intimidating. And why are you being a bitch? And why are you too much? And whatever. And, they're going to have to get used to it. I know a lot of the men that I know, they think it's great. And especially when it's their lady, they're like, hell yeah. They're proud. They're proud to see that and they will back you up. And a good man will. If a man is having a hard time with your strength, they're not the one. If they're having a hard time with you standing up for yourself, they're not the one. If they are discounting you, they're not the one. So much of this is us understanding what is appropriate behavior to begin with. The reason I love the pre-incident indicators is because it is a really wonderful place to start. That, and like I was saying, a book like Attached, talking about attachment styles and the different ways that people show up in relationships and kind of why. Those things together really help so many people who avoid situations becoming bad situations, whether they're emotionally abusive or physically abusive. It will really help you be able to determine what's appropriate. I think that is something that isn't talked about in the self-defense world quite enough, is the part before the violence, right? So when it comes to training self-defense, and I do really feel it's important whether you train just you can reach out to me if you want some suggestions of where to train. I trained in krav, and I do love krav, and there are some other incredible organizations as well. Whether you train in Krav Maga, whether you train with Impact, whether you train with the Elizabeth Smart self-defense, whether you do jiu-jitsu, I would definitely recommend adding some Muay Thai in there or some kind of kickboxing. But having some kind of training as well, obviously, is incredibly important. I do think it's important to have a female instructor. I do think it's important to be able to practice techniques on men at some point when you're comfortable. I'm a huge advocate for women training just in general. I was at an open mat this past week, as I was talking about, some of the toughest women that I have come across. And it just makes my heart so happy that there are so many of us out there now, especially with women getting competitive into jiu-jitsu, into Muay Thai and things like that. It's a whole different game now. There are so many women who are proficient in martial arts and will fuck you up. And they're comfortable with all of these things. And again, they're not necessarily a complete self-defense system. Really, to get the self-defense part of things is not necessarily to engage in a lot of these ways, right? And also to be able to practice your stress response. How do you function under stress? Which is one of the reasons that I do recommend women who train in jiu-jitsu do competition, because it's a artificial stress. I mean, it's very real stress, but artificial in the sense of life and death. But it gets you to see how you're actually functioning under that stress. How are you executing what you know under that stress? So these are all, I think, I've been on this like lowest hanging fruit kick in all the topics that I've been talking about. This is like lowest hanging fruit self-defense, self-protection. If you don't really feel called to train maybe anytime soon, or are just curious about, or just getting started, start with the book, The Gift of Fear. Start with also looking at that book Attached. Start, getting familiar with with pre-incident indicators and just paying attention to how you feel when you're around certain people, how they're talking, how they're moving, and the things that show up. It has kept me safe, knock on wood, and through, like I was saying, just a bunch of different scenarios. And I'm, very tuned into these things, and thankfully, because I was able to avoid things getting worse. It's just kind of what happens when we are women. So not to be all like, it's not to be fear-mongery about it. It's just being practical. It's like sometimes there are storms, you need an umbrella. You need to maybe get the right gear so that you can weather that storm. I tend to use weather for whether it's emotional storms or like situational storms, but just having a level of preparedness for those things is, in my opinion, one of the highest forms of self-respect that you can give yourself. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that this at least has given you like an intro into this topic or helped you with, some other ways to look at some of these things. Please, I would love if you have other like things you want to contribute or places, if you teach self-defense, if you train self-defense, I want to hear from you guys. This is a conversation that there's not a simple answer to anything. All I would really say is, fight for yourself. Fight for yourself in every way. Right? Whether it's physically or just for you in the world so that you can be who you are in the world. Okay. That's enough for today. If you are enjoying this podcast, it would mean a lot if you would subscribe or like or comment. I know we're all very busy though, so I get it if you don't. I know I'm terrible at doing it, but I'm slowly getting better at it, and it really does help. I'm doing this really just as a love note to the world at the moment and to anybody who happens to come across my path. Thank you for being here, and I hope this finds you well.